Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I apologize. It is very early in the morning on, I think it's Thursday. I did not get a podcast up last night because I have literally been working all night, and I got back here to the hotel extremely late. Was at some dinners and talking with tons of people. I've got some terrific updates for you. I also want to give you an update. We are going to begin doing, our goal is to do four of our podcasts every week live, where we can take questions, we can do a lot of interaction. So we're going to have more on that. It's probably going to start a week from Monday. A week from Monday would be our first one. We don't have a time yet. We're going to set a time. Um, but encouraging you, if you can make time to please join us, we would love to have you. I'd love to spend some time with you just to get to interact and do the podcast again more interactively. And but looking forward to it and sure hope that you can find time to join us. So thank you all about that. And I'd love to hear from you. If you don't like the idea, you're like, I don't care, then guess what? You don't have to listen live because it'll still be recorded and go up. But I sure hope you'll make it part of your day. I'd love to just hang out with you. And then it allows a little bit more interaction. I don't read the comments, and obviously I'm not stupid. I have people that do, but it'll just be more interactive, and I look forward to it, and I hope that you do as well. All right, let's get into the combine. I had a very interesting discussion late yesterday with an individual that the Raiders talked to and had a meeting with. Now, if you're not familiar with how the combine operates, they have window sessions where a team can request to speak to a player. And you get there and you get 15, 20, I think it's 15 minutes, but maybe 20. And I'm almost certain it's 15. And you sit in the room with the Raider people and they talk to you. And one of the things that this person told me, who's had an interview with the Raiders this week, that I said to him, was there anything different about the Raiders interview um, that stood out to you? Was there anything about the Raider interview maybe that was different than some of the other interviews? And this was a legitimate, uh, well interviewed, very sought after player. And I thought this was fascinating. He said, if you uh, would not have known that it was a football team interviewing a football player, you would have thought I was applying to be a UPS driver or whatever. He goes, they wanted to know about me. And he goes, I really like that. He goes, I walked out of that room thinking like, wow, they're looking for a specific person. They were looking for me. And then the person who was with him, this was not the player, but the person that was with him said, um, he told me it was like looking for a date or looking for a wife. And I thought that was fascinating. Okay, it wasn't the player that did the date or the wife issue, but it was just talking about the depth of trying to get to know somebody. I thought that was really fascinating. And I thought it would be fascinating for you as well, that, that taking you inside that room, that really tells you the mentality of a spy tech, and a mentality of a Pete Carroll and a Tom Brady of what they're looking for. They are looking for guys that are going to be competitors. I mean, listen, when you get here, they know if you're good or not. You wouldn't be here if you weren't good. Let's just make it very clear. Every single player that's at the combine is a good player, but there's lots of good players. And the Raiders are focused on, they want to get to know you. They want to know, what are you all about? Tell me, are you going to fit our culture? We're competitors. How much do you like to win? Are you going to go out and try to win every rep? I mean, are you going to be in the building in May, lifting weights with your teammates, competing, running sprints, doing stuff to stay in shape on your own because you're competitive? Because when OTAs show up, when mini camps show up, when training camp shows up, when week 16 of the season and you're exhausted shows up, do you keep competing? When you're down 28 nothing, do you compete? That's what they're looking for. And I thought that was, and I'm hoping to talk to a couple more players um, in a private type setting, or at least away from a podium with 10,000 mics. But I want to find some more for some players like that. I think that's an evolving theme. Um, I know last year when the Raiders met with guys, it was very detailed. They wanted to know guys' ability to process in detail, which I thought was very fascinating. This is a little bit different. Hey, we know you can do it. You're already here. And let's talk about what are you going to do? Who are you as a man? So again, very, very fascinating. And I knew that you would love that update. All right, we're going to turn to Matthew Stafford. I want to make some clarity here because um, there are some conflicting reports, and I want to make it clear on a couple of things. There was a report that I saw the brief social media synopsis of it. I did not. So if it was offered on television or video, I did not watch that. That essentially implied that Tom Brady brought Matthew Stafford to Montana to ski with him to recruit him to the Raiders. I have been told that there absolutely was a meeting in Montana, or that's okay. It was not specifically, it was not that word Montana did not come up, but it was, oh, they met each other, but that it wasn't a recruiting visit. It was literally oh, hey, how are you? Good. They were there and then a conversation did ensue. Okay. Now, that is what I know. I don't know the semantics. I don't know, any of the rest, but they did see each other and there was a conversation. Here is what I do know: the Raiders are interested in Matthew Stafford. I am in no way claiming nor saying anything is imminent, but there is definitive interest. At least that is how it is felt by one side of the potential relationship. Again, I want to reiterate, I do not believe in any way that anything is imminent. Um, but I certainly know that there is interest. But at this point, there's lots of that. At this point, you're looking under every rock, under every tree, at every potential quarterback. I would not be surprised if there were reports of, the Raiders are interested in this guy. I talked about the other day, Sam Darnold is willing to take less money to stay in Minnesota. And because of that, what if if the Vikings say, you know what, your last two games were not good, but man, the rest of them were tremendous. Okay, we're going to ride with you. Okay, it would make JJ McCarthy available. If JJ McCarthy were available, the Raiders would be interested. I know that. All right. And you can just keep going down the line. Okay, there's a lot of talk when you talk to NFL executives that they believe there is some level of interest from the Raiders in Zach Wilson. Do I think the Raiders are sitting here today salivating over Zach Wilson? No, but he can be gotten very cheap, and he's a guy that has potential. And if you look, Pete Carroll has done a very good job in his career of taking people that have been discarded and rehabilitated. Okay. Do I believe this is Hondo? Do I believe the Raiders are looking at Zach Wilson thinking, ooh, that's the guy that could lead us the next 10 years? No. Do I think the Raiders look at Zach Wilson, who has a lot of talent, and say, hmm, he maybe could become something in the right place? Yeah. So again, I think they're looking at every single angle. I know there is a lot of like with Matthew Stafford because he comes in instantaneously and competes and is your quarterback. And then all of a sudden, unlike last year where they had no clues, there is some stability. Now, a couple other things about Stafford that I think are very important. Do you remember me telling you a few weeks ago that an NFL person who'd known Pete Carroll a long time, who had talked to Pete Carroll, had told me that Pete wasn't approaching this like it's a 3-year gig. Pete Carroll is approaching it as, I'm gonna be here a long time. I'm gonna win where they don't move on after 3 years, or I get a new contract. I told you that's how Pete is now. Remember, I also told you that's how Pete was at USC, and that's how Pete was at Seattle. So Matthew Stafford instantaneously makes you competitive. Instantaneously. I mean, all you have to do is go look. Washington Commanders were essentially the same team with a quarterback last year. That's this league. It's how this league operates. It is a quarterback driven league. Matthew Stafford still is performing at an incredibly high level. And then it allows you to, let's say you do go get a Zach Wilson. Let's just say they were to bring him in, okay? And him and Aiden O'Connell sit behind Matthew Stafford, and they get uh, mentored and groomed. And all of a sudden now you've got 3 guys on your roster with extensive starting experience. You have 2 of them that have not proven that they are starting quarterbacks yet, but have the talent and the ability that they could be sitting behind a future Hall of Famer in Matthew Stafford. That's a very big deal. And that's a massive upgrade. And still, you can go get a UDFA or a late round, or if you don't get Zach, you go get a Will Howard or someone like Will Howard. It doesn't matter who. That's going to be very big. The number, I was out last night again, very, very late, talking to a ton of NFL people. Here was something that really intrigued me. 4 different people mentioned to me when I said, whose immeasurables are you looking for? All, well, I asked several people that, but 4 of them told me the same guy, Dillon Gabriel, the quarterback at Oregon. They think he's much smaller than he's been portrayed. And if he is, that's going to really hurt him. If he by chance is bigger, which almost never happens, never. I'll give you a funny story. I had it said to me last night by an NFL executive. When you're dating, everybody represents themselves smaller than they are. And he called it filters. He goes, in the NFL, very few ever do that. So usually you add, especially at the skill positions. I thought that was pretty funny. And so Dillon Gabriel is being watched very closely, the Oregon quarterback. His immeasurables are going to be a very big deal. But moving on, talking about the quarterback situation and just really how things are developing here, it is fascinating because this quarterback class, may be, well, it's not maybe, it is the worst in a long time. Doesn't mean there won't be a gem come out of it. It's just the worst in a long time. Again, as I continue to talk to everybody, Cam Ward is universally marked as the best one. But there is not one person that has said to me, Cam Ward is a can't miss dude. I was at a couple of dinners, and then a couple other. One guy hits me for dessert, another guy meets me for drinks, whatever. But I had a person say to me last night. He said, "I could pick apart every quarterback here." And he goes, "So whoever you pick here is going to be a faith-based pick." I thought that was interesting words. And he goes, "Now, some of them doesn't take as much faith if you're able to get them where their value is." That was a big point. And I asked him, "What do you think about Cam Ward, going in the top 5?" He goes, "Faith-based pick." I said, "All right." He goes, "I think he's a first round talent." He goes, "I wouldn't pick him outside of the first half." He goes, "But if you're convinced he is your franchise guy, I'd pick him anywhere. I don't care what other people think." He goes, "I don't care what I think. I'm not the one picking him." I thought that was a good point. I want to go back, and many of you may remember longtime NBA player Eric Snow. Love Eric. And his coach at Michigan State was Judd Heathcote, the legendary coach, won a national title with Irvin and all of them. Um, Judd was moving him positions, and Eric made it clear to Judd, I want to play in the NBA. I don't know if I'm an NBA player at the position you want me to play. And Judd Heathcote walked over and said to Eric Snow, Eric, you only need one team to think you are. And obviously one team did, and he went on and played in the NBA for a long time. Great guy, by the way. Um, that is it only takes one team to think it. So if you're sitting here today and you're Tom Brady and John Spytek and Pete Carroll and you think Cam Ward is a can't miss franchise quarterback, you trade up if you have to, or you pick him at 6 if you can get him. I don't think they can, but if you can, if you feel that way about Shedeur Sanders, if you feel that way about Jackson Dart. But if you don't, now the question becomes, if you don't think that they are valued there, what do you do? What do you do? Do you go back and hope, or do you make a faith-based pick? The good football teams don't make faith-based picks. They will just ride with it and say, okay, look, let me just give you an example. Look at the Steelers. Okay. They won a lot of Super Bowls. They're always in the playoffs. Always, always there. And there are times that they'll make a pick and people go, yeah, but that guy was on the board. Yeah. But the Steelers don't make faith-based picks. If they look at you and they evaluate you and they trust their evaluation process and they say, okay, listen, your value is top half of the second round. And they're sitting there and let's say they're picking at 22 in the first round. They're not taking you. It's not happening. Now, let's assume they really like a guy that's projected by other people as a second round guy. But yet they're sitting there in the first round and they have a first round grade, they'll pick you. They don't care. And consequently, I know their fan base at times gets really angry with them because they'll let a player of need go by. Do you remember last year in the draft? The Raiders needed an offensive tackle. And they kept waiting and waiting, and Raider fans were going crazy. But this guy's on the board, and this guy's on the board. This guy got picked. And I kept telling you, you can go back and watch the podcast. I kept telling you, yep, they did get picked, but they don't fit the scheme. It's not where the Raiders had them valued. And a lot of those guys did not have good rookie years. But look at Delmar DJ Glaze, the mule. He had a great rookie year because the Raiders knew what they felt of him. They knew where they felt the value was, so they didn't care who was going off the board. And to be successful football team, and I know some of you are not going to want to hear this. To be a successful football team, you have to be committed and you have to be locked in, committed and locked in on who and what you are. You have to be committed and locked in. And you can't listen to the fans. You can't listen to the analysts on ESPN or NFL Network or me. It has to be your gut. And so now it's a matter of the Raiders looking at value. If they think somebody's there, they've got to make those picks. I'll continue to tell you a lot of great players. We know that there's a concern around Abdul Carter possibly needing surgery, but there is a lot of conflicting opinions about whether he does or not. But he is universally the dude in this draft. There are some other guys that are going to get the title dude here. It's just a matter of talking to enough people. But I'm going to tell you a couple things. There's some Michigan defenders that are super impressive. Super impressive. There's a lot of defensive talent. There's a lot of talent outside of quarterback. This is going to be the deepest draft in a long time. I had a guy tell me last night, he goes, we have projected starters way into the 5th round. And because of how bad some teams draft, he goes, we're actually putting a premium on 5th and 6th round picks because we think that especially because there's so many bad drafting teams. He goes, we think that you could get starters this year in the 6th round. He goes, I'm not predicting that yet because I got to see how it goes. He goes, he goes, we've got there's so many. He goes, we've got for sure guys that with fifth round grades. And he goes, with that, I mean, there'd be fifth round availability because of the numbers that we have much higher grades on. So I'm very excited about that. And I thought that you would appreciate just the understanding of how the Raiders are approaching the draft and the way they're doing it. I really appreciate all of you. You're tremendously kind and good to us. Looking forward to doing the live shows with you. So thank you for joining us this, well, I guess it is this morning. We'll have plenty of more videos today from the NFL Combine. Tons of information. Make sure you're checking it out. SI.com/NFL/Raiders. Thanks, everybody.